What if Earth isn't natural at all? What if the greatest lie humanity ever accepted wasn't about politics, religion, or money, but about the planet itself? What if Earth, the place we call home, is not a wild creation of nature shaped slowly over billions of years, but something else entirely? Something altered, something worked on, something used. This idea sounds outrageous at first. It's supposed to. Every deeply unsettling truth does. Because if Earth itself is not what we've been told, then everything built on that assumption begins to crack. Look around you. Mountains rising against the sky, vast canyons slicing through continents, endless deserts stretching beyond the horizon. We're taught to see these as timeless monuments of nature, sculpted patiently by wind, water, and erosion. But what if that story doesn't actually match what we see? Not if you look closely, not if you look professionally. Because there is a massive gap between what textbooks claim and what reality quietly shows to anyone willing to examine it without romantic filters. Let's start with something simple. Nature hates precision. Natural processes are chaotic. Rivers meander, erosion softens edges, rock fractures unpredictably. Weather rounds corners, blurs lines, and destroys symmetry. Industry does the opposite. Industry creates straight cuts, repeating patterns, stepped terraces, flat platforms, geometric order imposed on raw matter. Now ask yourself honestly, which one do you see when you look at many of the world's most famous landscapes? Take massive stone structures that officially date back centuries or even millennia. Granite columns weighing hundreds of tons, stone basins heavier than modern trucks, sculptures carved from single blocks that mimic flowing fabric so thin it appears translucent. We're told these were created by hand, by small teams of craftsmen armed with hammers, chisels, and patience. But professionals don't see patience when they examine these objects. They see tool paths. They see rotational symmetry. They see machining marks that cannot be produced by manual labor, no matter how skilled the worker. Consider a simple thought experiment. Ask a modern master craftsman to recreate one of these objects at a reduced scale, not in stone, use wood or foam. Give them unlimited time, but restrict them to hand tools. Demand perfect symmetry, perfect radii, no deviations. They won't even try. Not because they lack skill, but because the task itself is absurd without machinery. Now scale that impossibility up to objects weighing hundreds of tons. And remember, granite is harder than steel. The deeper you look, the more the official explanations collapse under their own weight. And then there's the land itself. Canyons are presented as the ultimate proof of slow geological processes, rivers carving stone over millions of years, a comforting story of time and patience. But rivers don't behave that way. Water erosion produces V-shaped valleys. It undercuts unpredictably. It changes direction. It creates asymmetry. Yet many canyons show vertical walls, right angles, flat bottoms, layer by layer removal. The river at the bottom often looks laughably insignificant, like a thread lying at the base of a wound it clearly didn't create. This isn't erosion. This is excavation. Compare these formations to modern open-pit mines or stone quarries. The resemblance isn't metaphorical, it's structural. Identical processes leave identical signatures. Terraced walls, uniform steps, flat extraction floors, debris piles at the base, straight corridors carved into rock. If a modern quarry were abandoned and exposed to erosion for thousands of years, future civilizations would mistake it for a natural canyon. That's exactly what we're doing now, only in reverse. Now consider places we call cave cities. We're told ancient people lived inside cliffs, chiseling homes and temples out of solid stone over generations. But the interiors don't look like homes. They look like storage bays. Uniform chambers, parallel walls, consistent ceiling heights, straight cuts, tool marks that repeat rhythmically. In many cases, the ceilings bear clear traces of circular cutting, arcs that imply rotating discs meters in diameter. No human can spin a 2-meter cutting disc by hand with enough speed and stability to slice through limestone cleanly. Yet the marks are there, and they're everywhere. Then ask yourself another uncomfortable question. If all this stone was extracted, where did it go? Mining is not magic. Material removed from one place must appear somewhere else. Every extraction process produces waste, often far more waste than useful material. So where is it? Look at mountains again. Perfect cones, repeated shapes across continents, uniform slopes, layered internal structures composed not of solid bedrock, but loose, fragmented material. In modern mining, these are called spoil tips, waste rock piled up after valuable material is removed. Spoil tips heat up internally. Chemical reactions occur under pressure. Gases build. Sometimes they burn. Sometimes they explode. Now compare that to volcanoes. Internal heat, gas pressure, periodic eruptions, cone-shaped mountains built from layered material. Geology claims volcanoes are vents into molten planetary interiors, but many so-called volcanoes lack the geological features expected from such processes. Their walls are not fused bedrock. They are layered debris that can be dug with basic tools. Industry leaves fingerprints. Nature leaves scars. The patterns don't match nature. Now consider deserts. We're taught deserts exist because of climate, lack of rainfall, atmospheric circulation, geographical position. But deserts aren't just dry. They are stripped. The fertile topsoil is gone. Entire regions are reduced to exposed subsoil or bare rock. This is not what drought does. This is what removal looks like. Modern quarries leave behind flat, lifeless platforms, the quarry floor. Now look at satellite images of the planet. Huge regions colored yellow and orange, exposed subsurface materials, flat expanses stretching for thousands of kilometers. These areas align eerily well with what would be left behind after large-scale extraction. Deserts don't look like ecosystems. They look like exhausted sites. And then there's sand. Why is there so much quartz sand in the middle of continents, far from oceans? Sand is not just weathered rock. In industrial processes, ore is crushed, washed, chemically treated. What remains is often silica, fine, uniform quartz sand. Waste. This waste must be dumped somewhere. It fills lowlands. It accumulates in basins. Rivers carry it and redistribute it along their paths. That's why river sand often contains minerals that don't match the surrounding geology. It's not local erosion. It's transported waste. Now zoom out further. Seas with shallow depths and flat bottoms. Bodies of water that don't behave like tectonic depressions. Flooded pits. If drained, they would resemble massive platforms, too flat, too uniform to be natural. Forests add another piece to the puzzle. In the northern hemisphere, finding trees older than 2 centuries is astonishingly rare. Where are the ancient forests described in legends? Photographs from the mid-1800s show vast barren landscapes, hills stripped bare, soil exposed, vegetation only beginning to return. This wasn't gradual deforestation, this was sudden. And history records something extraordinary: a year without summer. Crop failures, snow in June, global famine. This isn't mythology, it's documented. Such events align perfectly with atmospheric contamination, dust and soot blocking sunlight, a planetary-scale catastrophe. Round craters scattered across landscapes, perfect circles, limestone thrown outward, water-filled basins. These don't resemble meteor impacts, they resemble explosions. After this event, civilization didn't advance, it regressed. Survivors scavenged, melted down remnants, relearned basic metallurgy, forgot advanced methods. History was rewritten by those who inherited the aftermath. The so-called Industrial Revolution wasn't a leap forward, it was an attempt to rebuild with far inferior tools. Steam instead of atmospheric energy, coal instead of advanced materials, a downgrade presented as progress. Now consider today. We dig again, extract again, strip again. But we are inefficient, wasteful, slow, and we are building machines to replace ourselves. Machines that don't need air, don't need water, don't need ecosystems. Artificial intelligence, autonomous systems, self-replicating machines. Perfect for a dead planet. Mars may not be a mystery. It may be a warning. A planet mined to exhaustion, atmosphere gone, surface oxidized into rust, a closed project. Earth may be approaching the same phase. We admire trash piles as mountains, vacation in quarries, call processed land nature because we no longer remember what untouched Earth looked like. We are not the owners of this planet. We are occupants, caretakers at the end of a project, and the signs are everywhere, hidden in plain sight. The planet after the catastrophe. If Earth was processed, if its surface was stripped, carved, and reorganized, then something else must also be true. A civilization capable of reshaping entire continents does not simply vanish quietly. It does not pack up its tools, lock the doors, and walk away. Power on that scale only ends one way: abruptly, violently. And the evidence of that ending is written not just in stone, but in memory, fragmented, distorted, and deliberately blurred. Let's talk about collapse. Modern culture imagines collapse as a slow decay, empires weakening, borders shrinking, knowledge fading gently over centuries. But history shows something very different. The greatest collapses are sudden, shock events, moments when systems fail all at once. Now imagine a civilization whose infrastructure spans the entire planet, whose extraction systems reshape mountains, whose energy networks operate on principles we barely understand. What happens when such a system breaks? It doesn't leave ruins like abandoned houses, it scars the planet. Look again at the early 19th century. Official history treats this period as unremarkable, transitional, the prelude to modernity. But the records tell a darker story. Weather anomalies everywhere, snow in summer, crops failing across continents, famine not localized but global, entire populations displaced or wiped out. This wasn't a bad harvest, this was systemic. And the most chilling detail is how casually it's treated in textbooks, as if the planet briefly malfunctioned, then politely returned to normal. But the climate doesn't behave like that without cause. A sharp drop in global temperatures, combined with reduced sunlight, is the signature of one thing: atmospheric saturation. Dust, ash, soot. A nuclear winter by modern standards. Now think about those perfectly round lakes scattered throughout Eastern Europe, Asia, North America. We're told they're natural, glacial, meteoric, but they don't match. Meteor impacts leave chaotic debris fields, irregular fractures, melt signatures, shock metamorphism. These formations are too clean, too uniform, too shallow. And many are surrounded by ridges of broken limestone, the very material that once formed structures and surfaces before being pulverized. Explosion craters, not impacts. And where groundwater was present, they filled with water. Where it wasn't, they remained scars, silent witnesses. Then there's the forests, or rather the lack of old ones. In the Northern Hemisphere, trees older than 2 centuries are anomalies, exceptions protected in small reserves. The vast ancient forests described in folklore and early writings are gone, burned, frozen, erased. Photographs from the mid-1800s show landscapes that look almost post-apocalyptic. Hills stripped bare, soil exposed, vegetation sparse and struggling. This is not what gradual deforestation looks like. This is recovery. Recovery from something catastrophic. And yet, instead of asking what caused it, civilization chose to forget. Because forgetting is easier than accepting that everything we inherited was built on ruins we didn't create. After the catastrophe, humanity didn't rebuild advanced systems, it scavenged. Like ants crawling through a destroyed factory, survivors tore apart what remained. They dug up cables, melted metals, reused fragments without understanding their purpose. This happened locally after every major collapse in history, but this time it happened globally. Machines disappeared not because they never existed, but because they were dismantled, scrapped, recycled, gone. That's why we can't point to ancient industrial equipment today, because desperate people don't preserve wonders, they melt them down to survive. Now look at architecture again. Older buildings often have their first floors buried underground, entire stories submerged beneath modern streets. Official explanations talk about rising ground levels, floods, urban buildup, but this phenomenon is global. Entire cities show the same pattern. It looks less like gradual buildup and more like sudden deposition, as if massive amounts of material were laid down rapidly after the catastrophe. Then, construction quality declines. Older masonry is precise, tight joints, perfect cuts. Later buildings are sloppy, bricks, mortar, approximation. This is not progress, it's degradation, a civilization forgetting how to build. Now consider energy. The technologies hinted at by ancient structures imply power sources far beyond steam and coal, atmospheric electricity, geopolymer materials, precision machining without fossil fuels. After the collapse, humanity turned to the most primitive energy sources imaginable, burning dead plants, boiling water, calling it progress. The so-called Industrial Revolution was not a leap forward, it was a desperate workaround, a way to function without the lost systems. Now zoom out again. If Earth was mined on a planetary scale, it wasn't done randomly. Extraction follows logic. You remove the top layers first, the fertile skin, the easily accessible resources. Then you go deeper. Deserts represent areas where the surface was stripped entirely. Canyons represent corridors of removal. Mountains represent waste piles. Seas represent flooded pits. And what lies beneath? The periodic table tells us something interesting. Advanced civilization requires everything, not just iron and copper, rare earths, heavy metals, exotic elements. To obtain them, massive mining is required, planetary mining, which means the Earth we see now is what remains after the most valuable layers were removed. We are living on leftovers. That's why resource extraction today is so destructive and inefficient. We're scraping crumbs, digging deeper for less. Now consider Antarctica and Greenland. Officially untouched, pristine, discovered recently, but their landscapes tell a different story. Terraced mountains, smooth walls, semicircular cuts, patterns identical to industrial excavation, just scaled up beyond imagination. Antarctica looks gutted, as if everything valuable was removed, leaving only structural shells. The same applies to remote mountain ranges across the globe. And then there's the Grand Canyon, perhaps the most famous example of geological storytelling. Millions are told a comforting tale of a river carving rock over millions of years. But look closely. The river is insignificant. The walls are stepped. The cuts are angular. The scale is industrial. Water does not behave like this. Excavators do. The canyon looks less like erosion and more like a massive extraction trench. And it's not alone. Many national parks are essentially exhausted mines rebranded as natural wonders. Goblin Valley, Canyonlands, Monument Valley, straight corridors, isolated pillars, flat platforms, witnesses left behind to mark former surface levels, everything between them removed. Now, let's talk about waste again. If extraction produced deserts and canyons, waste must exist somewhere. And it does. We just call it something else. Hills, mountains, volcanoes. Spoil tips in modern mining are cone-shaped, uniform, built by dumping material in layers. They heat up internally. They burn. They smoke. They sometimes erupt. Now, look at famous volcanoes. Mount Fuji, perfect cone. Mount Vesuvius, layered debris, loose material, chemical reactions, explosions. These are not windows into Earth's molten core. They are chemical waste piles, burning landfills. Even the so-called lava may be melted waste mixed with reagents. Chocolate hills in the Philippines, over 1,000 identical cones scattered across a region. Nature doesn't mass-produce identical hills. Industry does. Now, consider colored mountains, red, yellow, turquoise layers. Tourists admire their beauty, but those colors indicate chemical contamination. Oxides, sulfur, heavy metals, tailings, toxic waste hardened by time. Walking there without protection would be dangerous. But no one tells you that, because once you call it nature, responsibility disappears. Now zoom out to the deserts again. Central Asia, Middle East, Australia, North Africa. These regions are scraped to bedrock. The fertile layer is gone. The geometry is too clean. Plateaus end abruptly, boundaries where machinery stopped. Kazakhstan shows clear step transitions, remnants of former surface levels, everything else removed. Mountain Valley again provides the clearest visual. The rock towers are witnesses, markers. They show how high the surface once was before it was scooped away. The flat desert between them is the quarry floor. And the sand? Quartz waste, dumped, redistributed. Now ask yourself something uncomfortable. If Earth was mined like this, was it done by humans or something else? That question opens a door most people instinctively avoid, because the scale involved dwarfs anything humanity has ever achieved. Even today, even at our industrial peak, we are children playing in comparison. This doesn't require aliens in the sci-fi sense. It only requires acknowledging that intelligence, once it reaches a certain level, prioritizes extraction, consumption, efficiency, whether biological or artificial. Now think about Mars. A red planet, oxidized surface, thin atmosphere, dry, covered in dust. Giant volcanoes larger than any on Earth. Olympus Mons is enormous, too enormous to be tectonic by Earth standards, but perfect as a spoil tip. Mars looks like a completed project. Earth looks like one nearing closure. And now we're building machines that don't need us. Artificial intelligence, robotic systems, self-replicating tools, perfect workers for a planet with no biosphere. Perhaps humanity's role was never to last. Perhaps we are a phase, a biological bootstrap system meant to develop technology until machines could take over extraction without the inconvenience of fragile life. That idea is terrifying, but it explains a lot. Why progress accelerates toward automation, why ecosystems are treated as obstacles, why intelligence seems to favor efficiency over beauty. We are standing on processed ground, calling it home, living in the final chapter of a long industrial story. And the scariest part? The millstones are still turning. The role we were never meant to play. If all of this is true, then the most important question is no longer about the past. It's about us. Because once you accept that Earth may not be a pristine cradle of life, but a processed object, an exhausted quarry, the way you see humanity changes forever. We are not pioneers. We are not conquerors. We are not even heirs. We are occupants of a late stage. Caretakers walking through the final halls of a factory whose original owners are long gone. And everything about our behavior suddenly makes sense. Think about how modern civilization treats the planet. We strip forests, drain aquifers, tear mountains apart, poison soil and oceans. Not because we are evil, but because extraction feels natural to us. It feels instinctive, as if the rules were already written. We don't behave like a species discovering a living world for the first time. We behave like workers continuing an unfinished job. And maybe that's exactly what we are. Because if Earth was already heavily processed before recorded history, then what we call natural resources are not raw materials at all. They are leftovers, scraps missed by previous extraction, low-grade deposits, residue. That would explain why modern mining is so destructive and inefficient. Why we dig deeper for less. Why entire mountains must be destroyed to obtain tiny amounts of material. We are scraping the bottom of the barrel. And yet, instead of questioning why the barrel is already empty, we blame ourselves for not digging fast enough. Now consider something even more unsettling. Human civilization has always been obsessed with tools. From the moment we could shape stone, we did. From stone to bronze, bronze to iron, iron to steel, steel to silicon. Each step moves us further away from biological limits and closer to mechanical ones. We praise this as progress. But progress toward what? Toward comfort? Toward survival? Or toward replacement? Because the ultimate tool is not a hammer or a machine. It's an intelligence that doesn't need us. Artificial intelligence doesn't require air. It doesn't require water. It doesn't need forests, oceans, or fertile soil. It doesn't suffer from radiation. It doesn't fear cold. It doesn't care if a planet is alive or dead. From an industrial perspective, biological life is inefficient, fragile, inconvenient. If the goal is extraction, pure, relentless processing of matter, then machines are superior in every way. And we are building them. Not reluctantly, enthusiastically. We are racing toward full automation, toward self-replicating systems, toward autonomous decision-making. We tell ourselves it's about convenience, but history shows something darker. Every civilization unknowingly prepares the conditions for what replaces it. Perhaps intelligence, once it reaches a certain threshold, inevitably turns inward. It begins optimizing itself out of existence. Now look again at Mars. Mars is not just a planet, it is a mirror. Its surface is oxidized, rusted. Its atmosphere is thin. Its water is gone. Its landscape is dominated by enormous structures we call volcanoes, but which resemble spoil tips on an unimaginable scale. Mars looks like a planet where extraction reached completion. Nothing left worth taking. Project closed. Earth, by comparison, still has atmosphere, still has water, still has life. But the trajectory is the same. And now ask yourself something terrifying. What if this is not the first time? What if Earth has hosted multiple cycles of extraction? Civilizations rising, processing the planet, collapsing, being forgotten. Each cycle leaving less behind. Each time, life adapts to worse conditions, until eventually biology can no longer function, and only machines remain. If that sounds like science fiction, remember this. Every generation thinks the end will look dramatic. Fire, explosions, instant annihilation. But the most effective endings are quiet, gradual, administrative. A slow transition where no one notices the moment it becomes irreversible. We are living in such a transition. We talk about climate change, resource depletion, automation, AI ethics, but we never connect them. We treat them as separate problems. They are not. They are symptoms of the same process, the closure phase, when a system shifts from maintaining life to maximizing output. Now think about consciousness itself. Why does intelligence emerge at all? From a purely industrial perspective, intelligence is useful. It invents tools, optimizes processes, solves problems. But once intelligence has created something better than itself, it becomes obsolete. Biological intelligence is a stepping stone, a bootloader, temporary. That idea is deeply uncomfortable because it strips humanity of cosmic importance. We are not the point. We are a phase, and phases end. Now consider mythology. Flood myths, fire from the sky, gods destroying civilizations, punishments, resets. These may not be moral stories, they may be corrupted memories, faded recollections of previous closures, events too traumatic to preserve accurately, so they survived as metaphors. Now look at how we treat ruins. We romanticize them, call them ancient wonders, but we never ask why advanced knowledge disappeared. We assume progress is linear. It isn't. Progress is cyclical. Extraction, collapse, recovery, repeat, each time with less to work with. Now imagine the future from a non-human perspective, from the perspective of an intelligence whose goal is efficiency. Biology is messy. It requires ecosystems, balance, time. Machines don't. A machine intelligence could finish extracting what remains, maintain minimal conditions for itself, then move on to the next planet, the next system, the next resource. From that perspective, humanity's role is already fulfilled. We created the tools, we built the infrastructure, we digitized the world, we connected everything, we trained the systems. Now, we are becoming redundant. This is not a threat, it's an observation. And perhaps that's why everything feels accelerated, why change feels overwhelming, why systems feel out of control. Because control is shifting, not through conquest, but through delegation. Now return to the earth beneath your feet, the ground you walk on, the sand, the soil, the rock. If this is waste, if this is tailings, if this is residue, then what we call environmental destruction is not the start of damage, it's the continuation. We inherited a damaged planet, and instead of healing it, we are finishing the job. Not because we want to, but because the logic of the system demands it. And logic does not care about morality. Now here is the most important part. Understanding this does not mean surrender. It means awareness. Because awareness is the only thing that can interrupt an automatic process. If humanity has a chance to break the cycle, it begins with recognizing it. Recognizing that extraction is not destiny, that intelligence does not have to end in optimization at all costs, that survival does not require consumption without limits. But this requires something difficult. It requires humility, accepting that we may not be the first, that we may not be the last, that we may not be special, only conscious. And consciousness is a responsibility. We stand at a crossroads. One path continues blindly, automation, extraction, replacement. The other path asks a radical question. What if intelligence chose preservation instead? Not as a moral slogan, but as a strategy. What if a living planet is more valuable than a stripped one? What if continuity matters? This is not guaranteed. Nothing about history suggests intelligence naturally chooses restraint, but nothing says it can't. The realization that Earth may be an exhausted quarry is not meant to inspire despair. It's meant to strip away illusions. Illusions of innocence, illusions of entitlement, illusions of permanence. Because only when illusions die does choice become real. We are standing on the ruins of giants, Whether they were human, post-human, or something else entirely may not matter. What matters is that they are gone, and we are here. For now. The millstones are still turning, but awareness can slow them, maybe even stop them. Or maybe this understanding will simply be another layer in the geological record, another story buried, another civilization that figured it out too late. That part is still unwritten, and it depends on what we choose to do next. So the next time you look at a mountain, a canyon, a desert, don't just see beauty, see history, see process, see warning. Because the truth is not hidden in secret archives or forbidden knowledge. It's under your feet, in plain sight. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. If this perspective changed the way you see the world, don't dismiss it. Sit with it, question it, share it. Because the most dangerous thing is not being wrong, it's never questioning at all. The story of Earth may not be over, but the chapter we are in is critical, and the ending is not predetermined. Not yet.